My name is Jill, and as you can see from the titles, we are exploring the ideas of journaling, vlogging, and just creating as a way to really get through what's happening right now. And today I wanted to talk about the idea of why I believe, no scientific facts included, that journaling is a very powerful process for our nervous system. Now, most of us know we're fight, flight, freeze. Those are our three primary nervous system responses of the autonomic nervous system. And I personally believe we all have a primary default when it comes to danger. And we, as a world right now, are in a lot of different kinds of danger. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about why, especially now, it's so important to understand your default primary nervous system response and how you can use the journaling process to not only figure that out, but how to work through it so you don't get stuck. Because one of the things that we realize, I am a licensed clinical therapist and I have personal trauma in my history, is that trauma is really about what gets the energy gets stuck in our body. And so if we could find a way to discharge that, preferably before we get traumatized, so much better. So deep breath, and let's begin. Trying to see if this tripod works because I have two, they're both broken. Trying to see which one is the least broken and keep that one. It is so beautiful out today. How can we not do this outside? We had a cold front move through yesterday. It was really, really cold this morning, but I am so happy the sun is out. And as powerful as journaling is, the sun is one of the things that I need to calm down and feel like a human being in a good way. The wind, not so much. So why did I want to talk about journaling and the nervous system? Well, that's not going to be one of those exciting things that's going to make you click this title, but if you don't like trauma and you don't want PTSD, this is a really, really important conversation. Now, I've been talking a lot about this idea of being wired for danger, which really means those of us who are primary default is the fight response, but not just to just anything, but to true real extreme danger. We just can't help ourselves. We move forward. And so when that's happening, journaling just isn't a real thing. The power of the journaling process is twofold. Sometimes when you're taking a break from whatever it is that's got you super jacked up, just doing a lot of writing to discharge, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to get out of you. You're processing, you're discharging, you're getting it out of the looping cycle. One of the things that happens is when we have something within us, especially something we don't want, you may have those conversations in your head, by physically writing them down. It's a very, very powerful process to interrupt that loop. And there's just a little piece of our brain somewhere that says, I can relax. I don't have to think about it anymore. I have it recorded. I can let it go for now. And that's super important when the trauma process is fast and furious. Something's flying by. So even though the events are exciting, you obviously most of the time can't take a break to write down. But if you can, that's a very, very powerful way to discharge that energy out of you. Whatever your response is, if you're afraid, if you're frozen, if you're all jacked up and fighting, that's physically getting the energy, the chemicals, the processing out of you. You're giving it a place to go. If you don't, it will get stuck in your cells. Now that's just one theory, but that's the one that makes the most sense to me because a lot of the research that I did around trauma and PTSD and why we get long-term effects and nature doesn't, the only animals that really have long-term trauma are ones that we domesticate because we take away their natural processing to get that chemical discharge and flood out of their body. So much of trauma is not about an emotional reaction. It's about the nervous system getting super jacked up and then in stuck mode. And that's what a lot of that trigger is. When you have PTSD triggers, you are triggering that energy that's gotten stuck. So everything you can do to get out of your body, your mind, your energy, your cells, it is cellular, is going to be positive for you. So the first thing you can do when you're having a very strong nervous system response, whether it's you're afraid, whether you're running away, whether you're shutting down and collapsing into yourself, whether you're freaked out and you want to go hit something and you can't, just write. It doesn't matter what it says. It doesn't have to be coherent. For God's sake, don't show anybody. Just get it out, get it out, get it out, or draw or do something. You've discharging that energy, so important to get it out as soon as possible. Now, one of the things that happens with crisis, so when you have a full-fledged nervous system response, regardless of what it is, fight, flight, freeze, what you're having is a flood of chemicals, hormones, neurotransmitters, things that are just coursing through your veins. Your autonomic nervous system is your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Sympathetic racks you up, parasympathetic calms you down. So it's always a balance between these two. Stress, crisis, chaos, anything that turns on your stress response is your nervous system going into hyperdrive. Now, some people can pull it back very easily. Some people it becomes unleashed and you just can't get it back on your own. Doesn't matter who you are or what's happening to you. The process is the same. It takes about 48 hours to discharge those chemicals out of your body. So the more that you can do, exercise, getting out in nature, walking, any kind of movement, writing in the journal, anything you can do to process that energy, those chemicals, the whole emotional thing out, the better, because you really want to not get it stuck within you. So the second thing is the process of what the heck just happened. Now, one of the things we know about high crisis, high stress, a strong nervous system response is that we store it in the memory system differently than just everyday stuff. And that's why big things stick with you for so long, right? You can remember all the big stuff, positive and negative, that happens throughout your life, but the minutia, it tends to just fade away. So we're laying those memories down in a very different way. But what's critical is how you are laying those memories down. Now, again, the power of the journaling process is you're giving form to your experience, and you're not saying, okay, I just need to remember because I don't want to forget. And that's where a lot of the jumbling, I think, really comes in. We know that from long-term studies where there was the experience and there's how you remember the experience are not necessarily the same thing. And everybody remembers the same experience very differently. When? So the power of writing it down as soon as you can when you're a little bit calmed down is really important, because over time those things are going to change for better or for worse, alter them, shift them around. It's just what we naturally do. It's a survival technique of our memory to try to make sense of maybe something that we can't make sense of. It's too unsettling, it's too horrific. But this is just as relevant, if you have a fight with your spouse, if you get in trouble at your job, you still get flooded. Whatever the situation is, the chemical response of your nervous system is the same. So it's very powerful to write it down. Now, part of what we're doing here in this series is we're talking about what the art of containment is. And I have 4 keys that I'm really talking about to sort of generalize this experience. And it's analog before digital, private before public, write before speaking, and read before acting. And what I'm really trying to help sink for myself, as well as others who find this relevant, is that right now we don't seem to have a filter in our society. We just tend to put everything out there, whether we should or we shouldn't. And we're in a very different world where we don't need our memory to remember what just happened. everybody else has copies of our videos, of our social media posts, of our writings. And so it doesn't matter if we were sane and rational when we expressed ourselves. The reality is there's now written documentation or some kind of documentation that says you did this. And context, of course, is everything. But it's so easy to take those things out of context and use them against you, as we're all seeing witnessed in our world today. So the more we can do to train ourselves to step back and have our powerful nervous system response to whatever's happening around us as privately and as contained as possible, I think is really important, because it's just not like he said, she said anymore. It is heavily documented. There's no privacy. And when we're hyped up, when we're jacked up on our chemicals, I, of course, would never say anything I didn't mean. I mean, we all kind of overreact in our own ways, and we all have buttons that get pushed where we just go berserk. And so I think it's really important to find processes that take us out of the public or even the personal, even family and friends, and really focus on the private experience first. And that's what those last two are. Before you speak, read what you wrote. Is that something you really want other people to know? And before you act, read what you wrote. Because that's going to give you a sense of, is that something that you really want to go out and do? And it takes time to develop these processes, and we may not feel like there is time. But I was just listening to a guy talk about all the ways he regrets his experiences last January because he mouthed off before he understood the full picture. And all that evidence is being used against him. Not as he intended it, but how they want to twist it so that they can, punish him in a way that is wildly unjust. And so never before is it more important than finding a way to take the power of our nervous system and harnessing it productively, not just for ourselves, but as a way to protect ourselves from the effects of what is a very normal response. So, completely unexciting, journaling for your nervous system, super important, not just for your own immediate and long-term health and sanity and emotional resiliency, but also for your safety and security in a world that's going a little bit crazy. So with that, I'm going to say thank you for joining me. There's lots of links below. We're expanding what we're doing here. I'm expanding what I'm doing here. It's only just begun, and I hope you have a fabulous day, and I will say, journal on until I see you next time.